Welcome back to the Garrett Ashley Mullet Show. This is, of course, Garrett Ashley Mullet coming to you from Greeley, Colorado. I am, of course, your host, and I know you're going to like this video. You might as well go ahead and hit subscribe now to get notifications when new videos are released. Don't hit like on the video if you don't like it, but I think you will. So hit like at the end. That'll help me out with getting this content in front of more people. But this episode, August 26th, 2021, we're going to talk about Biden's remarks after the deadly Kabul attack. We're going to take as long as it takes, listen to as much of this as we can bear. I haven't listened to the speech yet, but of course I've been following reports all day. I've been home, watching the news, talking with friends. Very frustrated. Let's see what the President of the United States of America has to say about it.
A tough day. This evening in Kabul, as you all know, terrorists attacked that we've been talking about and worried about, that the intelligence community has assessed, has undertaken an attack by a group known as ISIS-K. Took the lives of American service members standing guard at the airport and wounded several others seriously. He had also wounded a number of civilians, and civilians were killed as well. I've been engaged all day in constant contact with the military commanders here in Washington and the Pentagon, as well as in Afghanistan and Doha. And my commanders here in Washington in the field have been on this with great detail, and you've had a chance to speak to some so far. The situation on the ground is still evolving, and I'm constantly being updated. These American service members who gave their lives, it's an overused word, but it's totally appropriate here, were heroes. Heroes who've been...
Wait. I feel like heroes, they may be, but if we really regard them as heroes, should there be accountability for the people that went into that situation and took their lives? Point number one. Question number one. Al-Qaeda, ISIS-K. Who ever heard of ISIS-K? I didn't. It's a new thing. It's like Special K. Is this a breakfast cereal? What is this? ISIS-K? Is this a way of saying that the Taliban really tells us one thing, but they do another? Is this a way of saying that ISIS is back, even though we really haven't had to worry too much about ISIS, the past several years, thanks to the Trump administration letting the U.S. military go after them? That Al-Qaeda is back, that Taliban is telling us one thing, they're doing another. They're telling us one thing, meanwhile they're winking and nodding at their own people, saying, hey, if you happen to get a few shots in, if you happen to get a chance, maybe humiliate these Americans for the whole world to see. Maybe let's settle the score with some of these Afghans who are trying to get out of the country at the last minute, because if they're trying to get out of the country, then they probably worked with the Americans. We probably want them gone anyways. If these American service members were heroes, what responsibility does not only the Taliban have? And when I say responsibility, I don't mean like the kindergarten teacher talking to the kindergartner like, hey, that's not very nice. We don't treat people that way. I mean, like, are there consequences coming to the Taliban? And are there consequences coming to leaders in this country like Biden? Not just Biden, because Biden has a whole team of people that are propping him up and helping to make these decisions on a day-to-day, either by letting him make the decisions and carrying them out even if he's not all there, or giving him the talking points, giving him the speech, getting the reporters lined up who are going to ask the right questions and not ask the wrong questions, not ask the dangerous questions that Americans really want answers to. Are the folks in the Biden administration who are responsible for these deaths of American service members over in Afghanistan, are they going to have accountability? If these American service members were just put in an impossible situation due to sheer negligence, dereliction of duty at the highest levels of the American government, for whatever reason, incompetence, incoherence, corruption, is there going to be justice for the people who, by acts of omission and commission, killed these American service members? We'll see.
Engaged in a dangerous, selfless mission to save the lives of others. They're a part of an airlift, an evacuation effort unlike any seen in history, with more than 100,000 American citizens, American partners, Afghans who helped us, and others.
There was a show a number of years ago called Lie to Me. Great show. Ran one season. I think it was too dangerous. I think it was too dangerous to teach people how to spot when they're being lied to. And there were too many politicians and public figures on every side of the political spectrum, or at least as far as the upfront image goes, who were not comfortable with everyday Americans being taught how to spot when they're being lied to. One of the things from this show that I thought was so interesting, as far as body language, as far as tells, ways that people universally, regardless of culture, regardless of what part of the world they hail from, regardless of whether they are part of Western civilization or what have you, universally, one of the tells when somebody's being dishonest is they all of a sudden, at least according to the show Lie to Me, they're always wanting to touch their nose. They touch their nose. Contempt, meanwhile. Do you know what the facial expression for contempt is? It's this. This. Somebody touching their nose all of a sudden, self-consciously. I mean, it could be, hey, you've got allergies, you've got a cold, you're just touching your nose because you got some congestion there. I think the President of the United States of America can probably afford allergy meds.
Others taken to safety in the last 11 days. Just in the last 12 hours or so, another 7,000 have gotten out. They were part of the bravest, most capable, the most selfless military on the face of the earth. And they're part of simply what I call the backbone of America. They're the spine of America, the best the country has to offer. Jill and I, our hearts ache, like I'm sure all of you do as well, for all those Afghan families who lost loved ones, including small children, or been wounded in this vicious attack. And we're outraged as well as heartbroken. Being the father of a Army major who served for a year in Iraq and before that was in Kosovo as a U.S. attorney for the better part of 6 months in the middle of a war. When he came home after a year in Iraq, he was diagnosed, like many, many coming home, with an aggressive and lethal cancer of the brain. We lost. We have some sense, like many of you do, what the families of these brave heroes are feeling today. You get this feeling like you're being sucked into a black hole.
There's a whole world of difference between finding out that your loved one has cancer on the one hand, and finding out that your loved one is in another country, being mismanaged, poorly led from the top, being left hung out to dry. And you can just not take my word for it. Take the word of our allies for it. When the president of France, Emmanuel Macron, corrects the record of this White House that he called President Biden and told President Biden that we have a moral responsibility to try and get our Afghan allies out. When the leaders of foreign nations like Germany are complaining that they still have tens of thousands of personnel in country and they're not sure how they're going to get them out, they're going to have to fend for themselves in getting their personnel out because this president and this White House and this American administration decided to move the timeline up. They decided to arbitrarily choose September 11th, 2021, 20-year anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Decided to move the timeline up that he set arbitrarily, and then he's going to say he's going to abide by the Taliban's timeline. The Taliban, according to our State Department's interviews with our cable news networks, for the whole American people and the whole world to see and to hear, when our State Department says that the Taliban now is in control, when our Pentagon is saying to the whole world and to our American people that the Taliban is in charge of perimeter security at KIA, Kabul International Airport, and this president, the buck stops here, and that is what leads to the death of, at least initial reports, a dozen of our American military service members and 6 plus Afghan military service members that we trained and equipped, that we tried to instill with our sense of honor and dignity to defend their country, and now they're trying to defend their people, trying to get home to us. And they're, I'm sure, hoping that their families get home to a new home because they aligned themselves with America and the West. When they have this president and this administration and this White House and the Democratic Party in the United States of America to blame for feckless leadership at best, or outright complicity at worst, when you give the names of all of our people in country who still need to get out, and you give the names of all the Afghan people and their families that we still want to get out, and you put the Taliban in charge of deciding whether those people get to us and are able to get out of the country, when those people die, they might be heroes. But that doesn't mean that Joseph R. Biden is a hero. And it is, quite frankly, for me personally, sickening to hear him extolling their heroism when he's the one who, as much as anybody, as much as the Taliban, has contributed to their untimely demise.
In the middle of your chest. There's no way out. My heart aches for you. But I know this. We have a continuing obligation, a sacred obligation to all of you, families of those heroes. That obligation is not temporary, it lasts forever. The lives we lost today were lives given in the service of liberty, the service of security, in the service of others, in the service of America. Like their fellow brothers and sisters in arms who died defending our vision and our values in the struggle against terrorism. Of the fall on this day, they're part of a great and noble company of American heroes. To those who carried out this attack, as well as anyone who wishes America harm, know this: we will not forgive. We will not forget. We will hunt you down and make you pay.
How? How? How will you do that? You give up Bagram Air Base? You put the Taliban in charge? The Taliban's going to give these guys over to you? They're going to work with you to get these guys brought to justice? Like they worked with us to get the Al-Qaeda leadership who planned the attacks on our World Trade Center and our Pentagon brought to justice? How? By all means, tell us.
I will defend our interests and our people with every measure at my command. Over the past few weeks, I know many of you are probably tired of hearing me say it. We've been made aware by our intelligence community that the ISIS-K, an arch enemy of the Taliban, people who were freed when both those prisons were opened, has been planning a complex set of attacks on the United States personnel and others.
So do you mean to tell me we were housing ISIS terrorists at the prisons that the Taliban opened up because we pulled out of the country and just let everything go to crap? Whose responsibility is it to make sure that those ISIS fighters who hate us, loathe us, utterly detest us, whose responsibility is it to make sure that they are not able to do that? Who dropped the ball? Who dropped the ball and facilitated ISIS getting out of prison, the Taliban fighters getting out of prison, Al-Qaeda prison inmates, captives got out of prison? Whose responsibility was it to make sure those guys stay locked up to where they can't harm Americans, our Western allies, our Afghan allies in country? Whose responsibility was it?
This is why, from the outset, I've repeatedly said this mission was extraordinarily dangerous, and on why I've been so determined to limit the duration of this mission. As General McKenzie said, this is why our mission was designed, this is the way it was designed to operate. Operating under severe stress and attack. We've known that from the beginning. And as I've been in constant contact with our senior military leaders, and I mean constant, round the clock, and our commanders on the ground throughout the day, they made it clear that we can and we must complete this mission, and we will.
This mission being what? To get out as quick as we can because the Taliban told us that's it? Because Beijing backed the Taliban, Russia and China both were quick to recognize the Taliban is now the new rightful government of Afghanistan. This mission, so it's the Pentagon. It's actually the Pentagon that told you. So the Pentagon told you that we have to finish this mission. So Biden's just following orders. Biden's following orders from our military commanders who told him we've got to finish this mission. It's very dangerous. We've got to finish it.
And that's what I've ordered them to do.
Okay.
We will.
So okay. You told them to do it. They told you back, yeah, we got to do it. So they repeated back to you your orders and said, we've got to do what you say. And so really, again, this all comes back to you, right?
We will not be deterred by terrorists. We will not let them stop our mission. We will continue the evacuation.
We will not let them stop us in our mission to surrender to them. By golly, we will not be deterred in our mission to give everything that we purchased, all of our military hardware and equipment and bases, over to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K. We will not be deterred. We will not let them interfere with our plan, with my orders to surrender everything to them.
I've also ordered my commanders to develop operational plans to strike ISIS-K assets, leadership, and facilities. We will respond with force and precision at our time, at the place we choose, in the moment of our choosing.
With what? From where? With what from where? With what from where, sir? With respect. Our military commanders told this president that if he was so insistent that we could only keep 1,000 of our troops in country, we were going to have to decide whether we were going to secure our embassy or Bagram Air Base. This president said, that's right. Choose. And they came back with a recommendation that if they had to choose, we would just do the best we could to get people out using KIA, Kabul International Airport. And we would abandon Bagram Air Base. So let me get this straight. You pull so many troops out that you can only secure the embassy, but you're still going to keep the embassy running, and you're still going to have tens of thousands of our people in the country, tens of thousands of our allies' people in the country. Your administration is going to try and float the idea, the talking point to our media to see if they'll circulate it around like an echo chamber, the way that your boss from 2008 to 2016 was able to do and bragged via Ben Rhodes with the Iran deal that he was able to do, creating echo chambers of misinformation to the American people using friendly members of the media. Your administration tried to float to the American people today that the people who stayed in Afghanistan, they made their choice. This is actually their fault. This is their fault that they're stuck in country with no way of getting out. It didn't take. We're not buying it. So now you're going to talk tough after being in hiding all day. And after this, I'm sure you're going to take selective questions from key members of the media. You expect to ask the right questions and not ask the wrong, dangerous questions that you don't have a scripted answer in front of you to reply to. But you're going to talk tough and you're going to say, we're going to strike back at ISIS-K in a time and manner and means of our choosing. Why should they be worried? Why should we believe you, given you couldn't even orchestrate the orderly withdrawal of our forces and of those Afghans we chose to take with us from the country? You can't even secure Kabul International Airport without relying on the Taliban. The Taliban. The Taliban. We're going to rely on the Taliban to provide perimeter security? What? 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 Huh?
Here's what you need to know. These ISIS terrorists will not win. We will rescue the Americans. We will get our Afghan allies out.
By the way, small side note, can we all remember what ISIS stands for? ISIS stands for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. This is Afghanistan. They don't have a foothold in Iraq and Syria anymore. You want to call these guys ISIS-K? They're mujahideen. They're Islamists. Call them ISIS-K so it sounds like maybe Trump didn't finish the job. You don't want to admit that the Taliban is telling us one thing and doing quite another, and that Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are still going to try and humiliate us all the more as they ever did, because now they've got Beijing backing them, investing a whole lot of money in rare earth mining in Afghanistan, right on their border. China's just right next door. Russia's right next door. Iran is right next door. China, Russia, Iran, they all have a vested interest in supporting this, in backing this. They do. But it's ISIS-K. It's ISIS-K. It's JV squad. Right, Obama? Right, Biden? No big deal. ISIS-K.
And our mission will go on. America will not be intimidated. And I have the utmost confidence in our brave service members who continue to execute this mission with courage and honor to save lives and get Americans, our partners, our Afghan allies out of Afghanistan. Every day when I talk to our commanders, I ask them what they need. What more do they need, if anything, to get the job done? As they will tell you, I granted every request. I reiterated to them today on 3 occasions that they should take the maximum steps necessary to protect our forces on the ground in Kabul. And I also want to thank the Secretary of Defense and the military leadership of the Pentagon and all the commanders in the field. There has been complete unanimity from every commander on the objectives of this mission.
Why? Why? Because you set the tone. You set the mission. You told them to do the maximum of what was necessary in order to secure, while also establishing a framework for them to operate within, while also stipulating that the Taliban is going to provide perimeter security, and they're going to secure the checkpoints and review who all makes it to the airport and who doesn't. Even though reports from the provinces of Afghanistan and Kabul were that the Taliban was going door to door in the night, beating Americans. Admissions from your State Department were that Americans were being pulled out of homes in the middle of the night by the Taliban and beaten through the night. And if they're being beaten through the night, they're not just being beaten through the night. But then you're telling our people they can do the maximum of what is necessary before this terrorist attack that we all were being told yesterday. We were all being warned yesterday. All of our allies, their intelligence was picking up on this too, that there was going to be a terrorist attack today. The fact that it wasn't squashed has everything to do with the framework that you created within which your commanders are operating. The mission that you gave them, they reiterated back to you as commander-in-chief. They would follow and they would do what you told them to do. Some of these guys you appointed because they were going to do what you told them to do, and others of them, they're good soldiers and they're going to do what you told them to do. So you tell them what to do, they repeat back to you, yes, sir, we're going to do what you told us to do. And then you can report to the American people in the world, there was unanimity. These guys are heroes. I have every confidence in them. I have every confidence in them as well. I have no confidence whatsoever in you. None. None at all.
And the best way to achieve those objectives. Those who have served through the ages have drawn inspiration from the book of Isaiah, when the Lord says, "Whom shall I send? Who shall go for us?" The American military has been answering for a long time. "Here I am, Lord, send me. Here I am, send me." Each one of these women and men of our armed forces are the heirs of that tradition of sacrifice, of volunteering to go in harm's way.
You're going to quote Isaiah right now? You're going to quote Isaiah? You know, by congressional declaration, by law, every year there is a national day of prayer in which the president is required, not that he has an option, he's required by law, passed by Congress, to issue a proclamation to the Almighty on behalf of this nation. I believe it's the end of May, but it's sometime in May, right before Pride Month, ironically, probably not coincidentally. This year, the declaration on the National Day of Prayer by Joseph R. Biden was missing one little word. One little word. Can you folks at home guess what that one little word was? One little word you would expect to find in at least Christian prayers, at least theistic prayers. God. God was missing from the National Day of Prayer. Prayer. At least that's what I'm told. Fact check me if you would like to. Here I am, Lord, send me. How about, let's remember the context of that, the preaching of repentance, the promise of a Messiah, the whole need for a Messiah being predicated on the sinfulness of God's people, the Messiah to atone for our sins, sins which you repent of. You confess and repent of. You don't blame everybody else for, and you don't make excuses for, and you don't manipulate everybody into thinking you're pious, having a form of godliness, and denying its power.
To risk everything, not for glory, not for profit, but to defend what we love and the people we love. And I ask that you join me now in a moment of silence for all those in uniform and out of uniform. military and civilian, who have given the last full measure of devotion.
Better than lies and manipulations.
Thank you. May
Better than
God
tough
bless you all, and
questions.
may God protect the troops and all those standing watch for America. We have so much to do. It's within our capacity to do it. We just have to remain steadfast. Steadfast. We will complete our mission, and we will continue after our troops have withdrawn to find means by which we can find any American who wishes to get out of Afghanistan. We will find them and we will get them out. Ladies and gentlemen, they gave me a list here. The first person I was instructed to call on was Kelly O'Donnell of NBC.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Instructed by whom? There's so many questions that can't be answered because there's a list of pre-approved journalists who get to ask the questions, carefully vetted, told what questions they can and cannot ask, chosen for the same reasons that Ben Rhodes bragged that the Biden administration, the Obama administration, Biden-Obama administration created an echo chamber of disinformation to try and pass the Iran nuclear deal. Continue.
Have said leaving Afghanistan is in the national interest of the United States. After today's attack, do you believe you will authorize additional forces to respond to that attack inside Afghanistan? And are you prepared to add additional forces to protect those Americans who remain on the ground carrying out the evacuation operation?
I've instructed the military, whatever they need, if they need additional force, I will grant it.
Is it odd to anybody else that he uses the same word when talking about being commander-in-chief here? He uses the same word that he used when he referenced the list of reporters to call on. Does anybody else find that odd, weird, strange, unsettling? Instructed. So he's the commander-in-chief. He instructs the military. Somebody else instructs him which reporters to call on.
But the military, from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the commanders in the field, have all contacted me one way or another, usually by letter, saying they subscribe to the mission as designed.
Why by letter? Why by letter? Why did you want that in writing? Forgive me, but that's a weird deal.
To get as many people out as we can within the time frame.
As many people as we can. Not everybody.
That is allotted.
By the Taliban. And by you. And by Beijing. By China, by Xi Jinping.
That is the best way they believe to get as many Americans out as possible, and others.
But not all. Not all Americans. President Biden. As many as possible. No man left behind, but we'll get as many as we can in the time we have. that we decided on.
And with regard to finding, tracking down the ISIS leaders who ordered this, we have some reason to believe we know who they are.
So we don't know who they are. How are you going to track them down when you don't know who they are? You have some reason to believe, which means you don't know who they are. How are you going to track them down? Not off to a good start.
Not certain. And we will find ways of our choosing without large military operations to get them.
Without large military operations. So if it would require a large military operation, we won't do it. They'll get off scot-free. CENTCOM commander did a press conference this afternoon. He was asked by a reporter if the Taliban let this happen, since they're in charge of perimeter security at KIA. Do you know his answer? I don't know.
Wherever they are. Trevor, Reuters.
Which is another way of saying, I don't know. I don't know where they're at.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And again, he reads the name off the list because he's been instructed.
And there's been some criticism, even from people in your party, about the dependence on the Taliban to secure the perimeter of the airport. Do you feel like there was a mistake made in that regard?
No, I don't. Look, I think
Okay.
General McKenzie handled this question very well. The fact is that we're in a situation, we inherited a situation, particularly since, as we all know, that the Afghan military collapsed 11 days before, in 11 days.
So it's the Afghan military's fault, and you inherited the situation from Trump. So it's Trump's fault, and it's the Afghan military's fault. Continue.
That it is in the interest of, as McKenzie said,
So let's shift the blame, responsibility over to McKenzie.
in the interest of the Taliban,
And it's shifting it over to the Taliban.
that, in fact, ISIS-K does not metastasize beyond what it is,
So it's ISIS-K and the Taliban and McKenzie and Trump. Got it. I'm with you so far.
number one. And number two, it's in their interest that we are able to leave on time, on target. As a consequence of that, the major things we've asked them, moving back the perimeter, giving more space between the wall, stopping vehicles from coming through, etc., searching people coming through.
What could possibly go wrong with having the Taliban search and stop everybody before they get to you? What? I can't think of anything. Great plan. Don't regret that. That's a great plan. Good thinking.
It is not what you'd call a tightly commanded, regimented operation like the U.S. is, military is. But they're acting in their interest,
Of course.
their interest. And so, by and large, and I've asked this same question to military on the ground, whether or not it's a useful exercise. No one trusts them. We're just counting on their self-interest to continue to generate their activities.
Please, by all means, explain to us how it's in the Taliban's best interest to do what we want them to do. Please.
And it's in their self-interest that we leave when we said, and that we get as many people out as we can.
Again, as we can. Get as many people out as we can, which is not all. Which is not all. Why is that not all? Why is that not everybody? There's an answer to that question.
Like I said, even in the midst of everything happened today, over 7,000 people we've gotten out, over 5,000 Americans over. So it's not a matter of trust, it's a matter of mutual self-interest. And but there is no evidence thus far that I've been given as a consequence by any of our commanders in the field that there has been collusion between the Taliban and ISIS.
If there were evidence, how exactly would you go about getting it? Would it be in the best interest? Would it be in the self-interest of Taliban government officials, now that they're the government, to provide that evidence to you? Are you trusting in their self-interest to provide that evidence to you? Do we have personnel in position to get that evidence for you? Are you in a state of mind to where you could read that evidence and interpret it? Would it change anything if you did have that evidence? Would it change a thing at all? One thing?
In carrying out what happened today, both in front of the hotel and what is expected to continue for beyond today.
But wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. And I'm sorry, this is heavy stuff. This is really painful. This is painful to watch. It's painful to comment on. And I didn't watch this before I commented on it and started playing this video. But he's saying the same stuff that happened this morning will continue on. That's what he just said. If that's not what he meant, that's what he said.
Amir, Associated Press.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have spoken, again, powerfully about your own son and the weight of these decisions. With that in mind, and also what you've said, that the longer we stay, the more likelihood that there would be a major attack. How do you weigh staying even one more day, considering what's happened?
Because I think what America says matters.
Happened. Happened. Who? Why? Why are we calling him this guy? Why even stay one more day? You're so powerful. You're so mighty and strong and impressive. And why not just pull out right now and get on with it? Why wait?
What we say we're going to do in the context in which we say we're going to do it, that we do it, unless something exceptional changes. There are additional American citizens. There are additional green card holders. There are additional personnel of our allies. There are additional SIV card holders. There are additional Afghans that have helped us. And there are additional groups of individuals that have been contacted us, from women's groups to NGOs and others.
Missionary organizations.
Who have expressly indicated they want to get out.
Christian missionary organizations, like people that we know, who know people, who know people, who are still in country, who are in hiding right now, and they don't know how they're going to get out. Christians. Reports were, several nights ago, that the Taliban, when it was going nightly, door to door, looking for Westerners, looking for Americans, looking for Europeans in country, looking for Afghans who had cooperated with the West. They were searching people's smartphones, looking for Bible apps to see who was a Christian. We've had Christian missionaries in Afghanistan trying to preach the gospel, trying to make disciples. And you can say NGOs, you're skirting the reality. We have missionaries in Afghanistan. We have Christian Afghanis in Afghanistan who've come to Christ, and they want out because they know that the Taliban being the government is a death sentence for them and their family. And when I say family, we can think of that in vague, fuzzy terms. We're talking about real wives and mothers, real children, real daughters who otherwise, if they're not killed, which they probably won't be, they'll probably be forced to marry Taliban fighters, Al-Qaeda fighters, ISIS-K fighters, Special K fighters. Let's call them Special K. Can we do that? Let's just call them Special K, please. Because they're special. These little girls are going to be forced to marry. That's who he's talking about. You can dress it up. You can call on your specially selected reporters. There are so many Americans and Westerners around the world who have an investment here. We're not talking about some tightly held secret. We know what's up. You know what's up. Come on.
And have gathered in certain circumstances in groups, on buses, and other means. That still presents the opportunity for in the next several days, between now and the 31st, to be able to get them out. And
so long as the Taliban lets them through the checkpoint and doesn't allow a suicide bomber to blow them up when they're just right on the outskirts of the airport, when they're 600 feet from freedom, security, a new life in Europe, in America. The next several days, so long as the self-interest of the Taliban doesn't decide that those folks, they don't need to leave the country. They can stay right here. We've got business to settle with them.
our military, and I believe, to the extent that we can do that, knowing the threat, knowing that we may very well have another attack,
You
the
just told us we
military has
would.
concluded that's what we should do. I think they're right. I think they're correct. And after that, we're going to be in a circumstance where will be, I believe, numerous opportunities to continue to provide access for additional persons to get out of Afghanistan, either through means that we provide and or are provided through in cooperation with the Taliban. They're not good guys, the Taliban. We're not suggesting that at all. But they have keen interest. As many of you have been reporting, they very much would like to figure out how to keep the airport open. They don't have the capacity to do it. They very much are trying to figure out whether or not they can maintain what is the portion of an economy that has become not robust, but fundamentally different than it had been.
So the Taliban doesn't have the ability. Just think about what he just said there. The Taliban doesn't have the ability to keep the airport open. But yet, our plan for getting our people out is contingent on the Taliban's self-interest in keeping the airport open and letting these people through, but they don't have the ability to do it. They'd like to, but they can't. They just can't.
And so there's a lot of reasons why they have reached out, not just to us, but to others, as to why it would be continued in their interest to get more of the personnel we want to get out. We can locate them. Now, there's not many left that we can assess that want to come out.
That's not true. That's not true. That is not true. That's a bald-faced lie. Whether you know that it's a lie or it was just on your script, that's not true. And also, by the way, self-interest on the part of Afghanistan and the Taliban to keep their economy up and running. Self-interest is now a phone call from you to Xi Jinping because China is going to invest, aka grease the wheels, in order to rub America's nose in it for all the world to see. They've been going around the world trying to broadcast to our allies and to anybody else that would stand with us against them if they make a move on Taiwan, saying, if America's not going to stand by their allies in Afghanistan, do you really want to be an ally to America against us? Think about it. Now, if that's what China's doing openly, I guarantee that the rapid recognition by Beijing of the Taliban as Afghanistan's new rightful government, their investment in rare earth metals in Afghanistan, them being right on the border with Afghanistan, they're going to convince the Taliban that it's actually in the Taliban's self-interest to humiliate us for as long and hard as they possibly can. That's the truth. And the truth is that the more Americans and Westerners and Afghanis who don't make it out of Afghanistan, it was closer to being America before the Taliban took it back over. The more folks who don't get out of Afghanistan alive by the deadline, after the deadline, whenever, the happier Beijing is, because it is in their self-interest.
There's some Americans we've identified, we've contacted the vast majority of them, not all of them, who don't want to leave because they're dual nationals, they have extended families, etc. And there's others who are looking for the time.
Here's a challenge. If somebody other than an approved journalist could ask a question of President Biden right now, or in the future, in the coming days, maybe ask a question of Jen Psaki. She's a little quicker on the uptake, so maybe ask her, and you'll get an answer this century. It'll be a lie, but you'll get an answer. If the Biden administration is willing to give a list of American personnel and Afghan personnel and Western allies in country who still want to get out, would they be willing to provide a list of Americans, Europeans, Afghans in country who've told them they don't want to get out? Would you be willing to give us that list? Or do you trust the Taliban more than you trust us? Just a question. Just a question for the folks at home.
So that's why we continue. I'll take a few more questions, but you, sir.
I wanted to ask you,
that's okay.
You say that what America says matters. What do you say to the Afghans who helped troops who may not be able to get out by August 31st?
I say we're going to continue to try to get you out. It matters. Look,
Try.
I know of no conflict as a student of history, no conflict where when a war was ending, one side was able to guarantee that everyone they wanted to be extracted from that country would get out. And
let me educate you. In history, when countries win wars instead of surrendering when they don't need to, the countries that win wars, they get to decide who gets out and when and how. So you intentionally threw the game. That's my professional opinion, my amateur opinion, whatever you want to call it. That's my opinion. You threw the game. That's all I can do. I can't do any more. However much more, it looks like there's an additional 8.5 minutes plus, just a little over 8.5 minutes more that you guys can watch on your own if you really, really want to. Maybe there's more in there, but I think I've seen enough personally. I'm saying, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe this. We may not all know 100% of the truth. God only knows 100% of the truth of what's going on in this situation. But I am damn sure that this is not the truth. We are not getting a square deal. We're not getting straight talk. We're not being told the truth. We're just not. That's all I've got for this episode. Thank you for listening. I am sorry that this is happening to our allies, to folks that trusted us overseas, who counted on us. Please know, any of you listening to this from overseas, please know this does not reflect all Americans. We are not all okay with this. This is very not okay. There is a segment of America that wants America to be over and done with. And when they say America's back, they mean the America of Barack Obama that kowtows and kisses the toes of everybody who hates us around the world, because deep down inside, those folks really hate America too. So I'm sorry this is happening. And there's a God in heaven who sees. Vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. God will not be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. There will be a reckoning for this for all parties concerned. May we be found faithful in that day. That's my prayer. But by all means, that's my opinion. If you disagree, put a comment down below. Let me know what you think I missed. If you think I missed a detail, I misinterpreted something, correct me. If you learned something in this episode, something you hadn't realized anywhere else, let me know that too. Put a comment down below. Hit like if you liked the video. Hit subscribe to this channel for more content like this in the future. God have mercy on America. For all the rest of you, thank you for listening as always. Till next time, God bless.